The goal here is that what can we do to connect them and plug them into the digital ecosystem so that they can actually have more channels to sell. We've seen a lot of new brands popping up these days. In fact, there's this trend where since pandemic, I decided to take some time off to go back to my roots and try to understand the origins of my family business.
Hello listeners, welcome to the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon podcast. I was just telling my guest today what is the story and angle of the podcast. So there are a lot of podcasts in the West where I talk to, Diary of CEO talks to business leaders in the UK or US, whatever, but there's rarely a podcast that talks to business leaders in Asia. And today I have really a business leader in Asia with me. We have Lennise Ng, right? And we've been connected for many years, but today is actually the first time I'm meeting her here today.
Finally.
Yes. So she's the CEO and co-founder, formerly known at the company as Dropee and today known as Borong. And it is a very unique, it's niche. It's not like a sexy out there business, but it's something unique, and I wanted to talk to her about it today. So she has a lot of accolades. So besides founding Borong or Dropee, she's also ASEAN Women Entrepreneur of the Women Entrepreneur Award in 2019. She is also a YCOM alumni and first in Asia, perhaps, right, Malaysia, and then EY Entrepreneur of the Year as of last year, and many other awards, Forbes 30 under 30 as well. And most importantly, when I met her today, she's a very chatty person. So she asked me a lot of questions, how I pick my podcast guests and how I choose them, etc. And she is very, I am so excited to ask her a few questions today.
Oh no, Bob's setting me up, So the expectation here is that I have to be chatty now.
So yes, Lennise, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Bob.
And I forgot to ask you this question before we start, but anyway, I'll just ask it to you now. So for all my podcast guests, and you watched a few episodes, it is, I asked them the first question is, what is your favorite Kung Fu movie?
What is Kung Fu movie?
Yeah, you have a favorite Kung Fu movie?
No.
Oh no, okay, it's fine.
I prefer my comedy shows and or action sci-fi kind of movies.
Maybe let's like, what do you like in action sci-fi?
I actually do enjoy one of my all-time favorites is Planet of the Apes.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Which the original or
both.
the Mark Wahlberg?
Both.
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 Oh.
Yeah.
The acting there is so good.
I think the storytelling and like it's the entirety of the whole thing and the journey that we go through as an audience and watching that. There's a lot of underlying messages and like lessons learned from that. So that's pretty interesting as well.
I get very emotional watching that.
You do?
Yeah, I'm like, oh my god. So like.
So do you get emotional when you watch like Disney movies?
No, unfortunately, I love animals.
Oh, okay.
So Disney, I'm not a Disney person. I get emotional watching very weird shows.
All right. So anyone who's a fan of weird shows, please drop a LinkedIn in mail to Bob. He would share an entire list of weird shows with you.
Yeah, I watch. I like reality. I like semi-reality. So that's. But I do get emotional if I watch something realistic, and it touches my heart and things like that. So I'm very empathetic. So that Planet of the Apes is like it puts you in the shoes. Oh, like these are the people who are suppressed, and then they come out and things like that. So that
no spoilers for those who don't watch them.
Yeah. So I'll not reveal any spoilers, but there's many ones that you
or Back to the Future. That's also another. That's like my all-time fave. But this is we are deviating the podcast to movies.
It's fine. So Back to the Future, right? It is still relevant today. Today, when I see clips of it on YouTube or Facebook, I'll stop and watch. Oh yeah, this is a skateboard scene. Every single one of it has a skateboard chase scene. Whether it's a futuristic skateboard or an actual skateboard or a waterboard, there's a skateboard chase scene, and I always like to watch how they relate to different eras and different So it is still relevant today, and they think that we would have floating skateboards in 2000.
Hoverboards.
But like,
Yeah.
don't.
Well,
Yeah, not really.
we're getting there. Or I think the better question is it something that is necessary for humanity? Like, do we need it or is it a want?
Yeah, cool. So getting into the questions, right?
Yeah.
So maybe I'll ask you the origins question. So all business podcasts start with the origin question.
Yeah.
So how do you get off? I know that you're inspired by family business, and how do you get to start? And back in the day it was called Dropee.
Yeah.
Right.
So, the company started 7 years ago. Actually, as of this month, it is exactly 7 years ago. We started it with an idea of trying to figure out how can we help mom and pop stores, specifically retail stores, to stock up the right products from the right suppliers in order for them to be at least competitive enough to the peers and the competition in the market, the large big box retailers. Then the reason why we went to it, because I was in tech, or at least like working for tech companies, VC firms, etc., years before I came back to Malaysia. And when I had the opportunity to look into to do anything, to reset and do anything, ever since I left the previous companies before I started Dropee, right? I decided to take some time off to go back to my roots and try to understand the origins of my family business and really connect the dots to see how did the family business end up where it is today. And it actually all started with my grandfather, who was born in a family of 19 brothers and sisters, super duper poor, had to figure out and had to do whatever it takes to earn money, right? He wasn't a creative person or an innovative person. All he cares about was as a businessman, like trying to figure out how can he earn $1 or $1 to actually get the whole family out of poverty. He worked many jobs, but it wasn't until his previous job that he worked with, he got fired, or at least the biscuit factory shut down. So everyone got laid off, and that's where he started being a sundry store, quote unquote, sundry store owner. But this was at a young age of, if I'm not mistaken, like 14, 15 years old. And as a sundry store owner, quote unquote sundry store owner, because all he had was a bicycle. And he sold whatever he could get his hands on, right? He's like, biscuits, you want this to be sold? It's okay, I'll tie it on my bicycle and I'll cycle it around and like try to sell it as many as I can. And there's a lot of trial and error when it comes to him doing this kind of business. Eventually, long story short, it took him years, close to a decade, to figure out and found the right supplier, quote unquote right supplier. He met a guy who sold school shoes or distribute school shoes, and he needed he engaged with my grandfather to distribute it out, and he found out the margins was great, the demand was there. And schools were reopening back because this was right after the Japanese occupational era, and yeah, he just lucky at the right place at the right time. But reflecting on this, how many other mom and pop store owners actually had that chance to be at the right place at the right time, to meet the right suppliers with the right products in order to be the turnkey of their business, for it to grow? We have millions of honest, hardworking mom and pop store owners that there's a bahasa peribahasa if you're familiar of this, called kais pagi makan pagi, kais petang makan petang. So they just go with the flow, and because they don't know what they don't know, it is what it is. And I found that if I could change that using tech or create a platform where it gives more transparency for these mom and pop store to connect and identify and discover the products that potentially sells well for their stores, or products and working with suppliers that sells these products, then I could take it forward and there's a possibility to actually help these mom and pop store to be more competitive and to end up having a story like what my grandfather has.
That's amazing. I really relate to that.
Yeah.
My grandmother, who passed away 2 years ago, used to own a sundry shop in Perak. And it was a small town in Perak called Selama. And then she owned a sundry shop and she ran it for 30 years by herself after my grandfather passed away. And I imagine this is something that would help her. But I want to drill it down even more. And let's say if you were talking to my grandmother today and let's say talk to Auntie, how would you explain it to her? How can it help her being a sundry shop owner? How can it help her actually, grow or increase her revenue?
Yeah, so I think first things first, for the aunties and uncles there, the very basic thing that we educate them on is to help them identify what is their best sellers in their store and what are the products that does not move fast.
I'll add to this because, they just sell and they don't have inventory. They just sell and money comes in. They don't even know
they don't check.
Which one.
They're not very...
They just... agak-agak that this one sell very fast.
Correct. So they like you said, right? It's agak-agak. They go with gut feel or whatever that the salesperson advised them to stock up on, etc. Many of them lack that, either the education, awareness, or even insights to know exactly what how their store is being operated, the health of their business. So instead of giving fancy jargons to them, all what we do, my team does, is just go on ground and let them know that, okay, we come in, uncle, auntie, we come in to help you. Within less than a week, we can help you understand what exactly works well for your store, what doesn't, what product doesn't, and maybe even advise you what are the items that you should stock up on your shelves and how can you make this a little bit better. They don't have to lift a finger or change anything yet. All they had to do was to provide us with their past transaction histories or their suppliers. And many of them, actually, you'll be surprised that they don't document these things. So we have to work together with their local wholesalers or distributors or understand their patterns of purchases and then come up with like an insight report. Not the formal documents kind. We do have that as well for the more educated ones, but we go in there and we go through one by one with them. This is what works well. If you stock up 1,000 SKUs in your stores, how many of them actually contributes to how much percentage of your sales? And so on and so forth. So it's that layer of education. So when we started, right, that's what we literally have done. We go door to door. To the stage where we're at today, it's more automated, or where we work with local municipal governments, association bodies. We even have our own like open office hours or coffee sessions, etc., that we run. It's just to be in touch with this community. It's part and parcel of our community building aspect to it. And it is not, and we don't do this activity, this whole consultative kind of approach for money, for income, but it's more towards, let's us understand what is your pain problem in running this store and what kind of business owner are you? Because many of them are very happy with where they're at today. They don't have any successor, So they just want to run this and live it as it is. But we do have retail store owners that wants to automate it. Maybe they go pass it. This store was passed down by their dads or their grandparents, right? And they want to automate the whole processes. So this is where we thrive the most, where we come in and said, okay, you want to automate this? Let us help you figure out, knowing these insights, what are the aspects that you can actually automate orderings, procurements, and all you have to do is just focus on running the store and opening the store and shutting the store on time. Yeah.
So once you identified what works well for them, do you also help them find the right, because you're also like a marketplace?
Yes.
So like, do you also help them find the right suppliers?
Yeah. So finding the right supplier, and I'm gonna loosely, I think like the definition of right needs to be be clarified a little bit more here, right? The right supplier in our definition is a supplier that can provide good service in terms of fulfillment, delivery, stock availability to the retail customers. They sell the product at fair pricing. And when we say fair, it doesn't necessarily have to be the cheapest. It just needs to be not exorbitantly high, like 20, 30, 50% markup. That's ridiculous. That's crazy. And in order for us to do this, we had to list and gather as many sellers on the platform. And then one by one, we identify who are the right ones we work with. We actually work together with a couple of brands to elevate the ones who, especially in the second and third tier cities, right, to elevate them, to make them a bit more known in their region or the area that they serve. And we do that by highlighting and enhancing their presence, whether it's digitally on our platform or offline when we have our consultative approach. It's like, oh, this is interesting. You are buying this X beverage brand. We know there's X amount of distributor here. You might be interested to actually explore more with all of these other ranges. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is the right, finding the right supplier, right? Because everything, not just the price, service and added value and things like that as well.
Yeah.
And now I think you do more than just that. So you rebranded last year from Dropee, and now it's called Borong. So can you tell us the rebranding purpose as well?
Yeah. So when the name Dropee comes about, because at the very beginning we created the platform to be like a dropship, B2B dropship marketplace. We call it dropship not because it's white label brands, etc. It could be, but it was because we don't hold any assets. We are super asset light. It's the platform. It was meant to aggregate the demand, the purchases, and then connect them with the suppliers. And the suppliers, without having to meet the retailers, can do the dropship item straight away to them. So that was the whole concept at the very beginning, right? Before we started getting the wholesaler sales team and the distributor sales team involved in this whole ecosystem. It was because we started involving the offline sales team, not only ours, but we work with wholesalers and distributors to enhance their sales service to their customers. This is where, after 7 years later, we decided that it is apt for us to change our name to Borong, because we were no longer just drop shipping, right? It's offline to online experience. It has to be standardized, it has to be the same. So the reason why we chose Borong, because of two main things. So one, the mission of us is to support local mom and pop store, to transform their business so that they can stay relevant and in the midst of this whole competitive market. And in order for them, so that's number one, right? Localizing. Number two, it's because we're offline, we focus a lot more on transferring your business to connect offline to online. And we chose the Malay name Borong because it really represents wholesale. And we started a company in Malaysia, and what best to represent who we are, where we are at, aside from the Malay language. So it doesn't matter whether we expand to other parts of the region. We are currently in Indonesia as well. We have a small presence in Singapore, but in the future, as we grow to other parts of the region, the word Borong is a reminder for us all to know where we're at. We are always focusing on supporting local and remembering our roots. And we're encouraging these local businesses to be the heart of its community, to still serve its community well by existing, like how your grandmother, who runs it for 30 years, we would want to hope and support more of these businesses to continue to thrive beyond just 30 years. Yeah. And plus, Borong has 2 O's, so it's offline to online.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I comment that. I love that you have a very Malaysian name, rather than like calling like so like commerce or something like that. So you have a very Malaysian, very unique, very localized name. So I really love that, and I really like your mission of helping all the mom and pop stores and everything. So maybe a follow up question to that is that, do you have any stories of maybe like a mom and pop store who before working with your team, they had this and that, and then after working with your team, they managed to be more streamlined and things like that?
Yeah. So we have cases where more tech savvier ones, especially the younger, the millennials or the Gen Z business owners, that had their businesses passed down to them. They are interested to still run and maintain their shops, but they do not want to do this full time. So this is where we come in and we do the whole sweep of analysis and understanding what exactly works for them, or their stores, or the type of business, and how big their outlets are, how many shelves do they have, etc. We use past transactional data that they have, and we also add on to the industry data that we have on our platform to recommend them X amount of steps that they have to do. And we install tools so that on the go, they don't have to physically be in a store all the time. They could check their business health through the app. Whether there's low in stock and they had to reorder certain things, or stock availability from the local distributors is running low, a reminder for them to place orders beforehand, and also recommendations of potential products that could complement their bestsellers, especially the new ones, right? We've seen a lot of new brands popping up these days. In fact, there's this trend where since pandemic, Malaysians, the household, used to consume roughly around 60% of their products are imported in.
Yeah.
Right. The numbers are close to 50-50 now. In fact, in the second and third tier cities, tilted more towards local brands. The preference for local brands is even higher. So we see that this is a change and a shift of the end consumers' behavior, which as a business, if you're running a store, it's important for you to know. Yeah. And we make it easy for you through your fingertips. You're able to gather that.
Yeah, so they can check their data anywhere they are, and they can know the preferences of the local consumers as well.
Yeah.
And some of them increase their profits, am I right?
Yes. I think we solve the lowest hanging fruit first, right? Are you stocking up products, or are you investing your cash in products that moves fast? If majority of the products that you invest in your store doesn't move fast, then that's a problem, because you have limited shelf space. It's in retail game, it's all about like shelf spaces, and so that's the key that we help. So once that's happened, then we fix the rest, and it becomes a snowball effect. So on average, we see like about 20-30% increase in sales within the first 2 years.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can almost imagine when you talk about the mom and pop stores, so you put me into a grocery shop already, and I can smell the onions. I can smell the ambience
Yes,
of
yes,
a
yes.
grocery store.
Yes, 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 yes.
And you mentioned, because you mentioned the younger tech savvy owners. How about like the really 30-year-old sundry shops that are still around?
30-year-olds are tech savvy too.
Yeah, no, the 30-year-old stores
Oh,
itself.
30-year-old stores.
Yes.
Ah.
Do you have a challenge, like maybe getting the adoption from the older, less tech savvy
Yeah.
generations?
I won't lie. The challenges comes in terms of succession planning, not on our side, but on their side,
Like the series Succession. Yeah.
which won a lot of Golden Globe awards this year. But I digress.
Yeah.
The many of the retail store owners that do not have a successor in mind tends not to change
Oh.
because there's no point for them to change. They like doing things as is. It is part of their lifestyle. And to change, nobody likes change. No human or nobody I've ever actually enjoys change, right? So for those who don't have a successor, they tend to be okay with whatever it is. If they're curious, they will log on to the platform, check it out. But most of the time, they're just happy being served by their customers, doing things that they've been doing for many, many years, and so on and so forth. So, yeah. And not necessarily this is just only applicable for like 30-year-old stores and what, right? Like we've have customers or retailers that we worked with who are in their 60s. They're in their 60s and they understand this very well, and they know that they want to do this before they pass it over to their sons. And yeah, and I think at the end of the day, one of the biggest roadblocks that we saw in terms of digital adoption is just succession planning. Do they have that or not?
That makes a lot of sense, because if I'm going to die together with the business, let's say that, I don't need to change everything. I still remember my grandmother just, like handwritten receipts, and then like the receipts are like, like poked into this metal,
Yes, the metal rod.
and most Chinese mom and pop shops
Yes.
still do that.
Yeah.
And if they have succession plan, like you said, then okay, I need to think further.
Yeah.
How can I, hand over?
Yeah.
How can I pass this over
Yeah.
to the next generation?
Yeah.
And I know that that you are focused on more on Malaysia and Indonesia this coming years.
Yeah.
And I also know, I just read that you are also looking to expand to say 300,000 businesses that you were looking to work with.
Yeah.
So like how are you going to achieve that?
I think the best form of growth in whatever that we do has always been in partnerships. So we form a lot of we work a lot with association bodies, communities, municipal governments, with the goal in mind is to educate. That's the very first thing, is to understand, does the community and can they embrace, or do they understand what it means by digitalization? We have been talking about digitalization across Southeast Asia for years, but I think that the full embrace, how businesses fully embrace digitalization, is not there yet. It's still a lot of reliance on people serving them. There's a lot of reliance on subsidies, etc. So we haven't reached a stage where businesses understand that it is worthwhile, the investment, to invest in the right softwares, solutions, and even upskilling of themselves, right, to stay relevant in this digital era. So it's still a transition, and we're still in the midst of that transition. So in order for us to hit that, just to answer your question, is working with really, really good partners. Yeah.
And these partners, right, I imagine there's a lot of like retail associations business associations, etc. They're also quite old school, in my experience. They're also quite old school. Is that is it challenging? What are the challenges you face? Getting on this. They're also been around for a while, and they're also, like I said, old school. Is it challenging working with them?
I think it's not as challenging as pre-pandemic. Pandemic has provided, it has leapfrogged them to understand that digitalization is important, but not only on the B2C side, but for the entire business. And we're not only talking about the buku 555, where you put all this and you write. And some shops also have an abacus where they do all these calculations.
If you can find an abacus, wow.
But we're talking about those business owners, right, who understands that the need to gain more knowledge about their stores, about their wholesale business or the distribution business, to know that are they stocking up the right products? Are they actually the health of the business in their fingertips? The need to actually do that is more important. And of course, pandemic has spurred more digital adoption because at that point in time, MCO happened, and lockdown happened. So offline approaches, etc., is completely out of the question. So they had to adapt to a new era or a new way of working. And that's where you see a lot of shifts in terms of sales channels, right? From offline to online.
Yeah.
So being flexible and connected and ensuring that all channels that you sell or you buy have the same experience is super duper important. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish you can make a difference here. Of course, the pandemic has accelerated this digitalization, and I think yes, in Asia here, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, we are very very not digitalized at all.
We're getting there. Actually, we there's an exponential growth in terms of this, but our work is not done yet.
Yes, of course. There's a lot. I think not just as a business, but you are helping all the, like you said, mom and pop stores, all the in sundry shops. Sundry is not a word. I noticed sundry is not a word that's used so much outside Malaysia. Sundry shops, all these grocery stores, and getting data, being more aware, getting systems in place, making a huge difference in that space. So thank you so much for that. And maybe before we wrap up, the reason why I also reached out to you is because you're also a strong women advocate, and you are the CE Trade for Women Advocate for, I hope I say this right, UNCTAD.
Yes.
Maybe you can tell us a bit about that as well. Like, what is CE Trade for Women?
So, E-Trade for Women is a program that is under the United Nations division called UNCTAD. It was created to encourage, identify the right community leaders to work together with traditional businesses, especially that are women-owned, to adopt digital solutions so that they can actually start getting more revenue. So the whole idea of this whole program was because that they saw especially in developing nations, the amount of single income household owners was really, really high. As of 2022 stats, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is roughly around like single household income is about 60 to 70%. So if they're able to double that to be a dual household income earner, that means both husband and wife are able to earn money. That would definitely spur more economical growth because the household has more disposable income. But in order to ensure that women are able to generate income amongst their busy lives and schedules, so most of them are stay-at-home moms or doing running traditional businesses like sundry stores, etc. How then can they use digital channels to get more sales? So that was the basic idea of eTrade for Women, is to ensure that women are able to have more sources of income. And in the macro level, it helps the economy, the microeconomy to grow. And in turn, on a macro level, then it's good for the nation and transforming, expediting the developing nations to become a developed region. So I got into this role because I was already doing my work at Borong, really looking and working together with these traditional businesses, whether it's male or female owned, at that point in time, it doesn't matter. It's just really understanding how can we help them to grow more sales, not only from the offline perspective, but also if you're adopting e-commerce now, how can that help you elevate your business? Even suppliers as well. In the past, majority of them, even up to today, right, it's still pretty much offline. B2B is a very offline thing. Because it's built on trust and relationship. But our platform is meant to enable them to transform or to connect their business from offline to online. So a lot of the work that we have done has led me to be very, very familiar with the mission statement of this program, the eTrade for Women. And so when they reached out to me, it was a no-brainer for me to take on this role. So this is actually my last year. It's a 2-year appointment role as a Southeast Asia eTrade for Women ambassador. I've been working with ministries, governments, policymakers, and bringing the voices from the community to ensure that we have better policies to encourage more offline businesses, especially if it's women-owned, to adopt digital solutions.
Wow.
Whether it's in terms of compensation, like subsidies on certain tech solutions and whatnot. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think women trading so that they can have another source of income.
Yeah.
So are they mostly they can be business owners?
Yes.
And they can be housewives
Yes.
as well?
Yes.
Or just
agents. It could be anything, right? But the goal here is that what can we do to connect them and plug them into the digital ecosystem so that they can actually have more channels to sell, has more revenue stream and income.
So in Southeast Asia, we have very good marketplaces, from what I noticed, like all the Shopee, Lazadas, all this. So is it more thriving in this region, or what is it like compared to the other regions in the world?
I can't say. I apologize, it's because I don't have the stats on top of my head, right? But I think that Southeast Asia adopts digital solutions better because we are more mobile friendly.
Yes.
And we have two countries in Southeast Asia represents the top 10 most active users in social media.
Yes.
Indonesia and Philippines.
Yes, of course.
So I think Southeast Asia is very people here are very tech savvy, or at least social media savvy, to find ways to sell online. But it's a very community-centric kind of sell. It's social commerce. But it requires the education to be plugged in. In fact, you'll be shocked by this, right? This is 2022 numbers. In developing region, women are only less than 65% of the women population uses internet.
In Southeast Asia?
Yes.
It's surprising because from talking to other experts as well, mobile penetration is high. It's like in Indonesia, you can say, I don't have a phone line, but I have Facebook. They'll say this.
Yeah.
So it's surprising that, that's...
When utilization of internet, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, infrastructure is also another thing. You can have mobile, you can do WhatsApp, but...
Using it.
But being connected. Stability, internet stability and connectivity is super duper important And this was one of the things that in the most recent e-week, there was this thing that the UNCTAD hosts in Geneva called e-week, and there's a lot of policymakers come there. One of the big things that they talk about is building stable infrastructures. And so that we don't have another case where, students wants to sit for exam papers and etc. had to climb trees or whatnot. But I think going back to your question, right? Like at the end of the day, connectivity is super duper important. Each and every one of us plays important roles, be it whether you are someone that sits in the policy making aspect or someone who is on the community aspect or a mom and pop store owner or even a tech company, right? You're an enabler. All of us had to play our own roles in order to create this ecosystem to thrive so that there are more businesses, especially with the women, to adopt digital solutions in hopes that this would spur economical growth in the region.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think it's really inspiring talking to you. You're helping mom and pop businesses. You're now helping women to utilize internet to trade and to get another source of income. So it's very inspiring listening to you today. And
thank you for having me.
Thank you for answers as well. So I also like to shout out the venue sponsor. So today we are Iconic Co-working Space, and it's Lennise's first time here.
It is.
So it is a space for events, for co-working, and also if you want to do your trainings and etc. It's a great supporter. I was just mentioning to Lennise of small businesses, startups, and also entrepreneurs. So to check out Iconic Co-working Space as well if you're in the area as well in PJ.
Yeah.
So thank you again, Lennise, for coming.
Yeah, so fun. Pleasure having
Right. Thank you so much, and I'll see you at the next episode.